Breaking the Cycle of Poverty, featuring Jay Height, Executive Director of Shepherd Community Center in Indianapolis. My name is Tim Swearens, and I'm your host for these conversations that explore why poverty remains such a persistent problem in the United States. On this episode, we are continuing our conversation with Dave Miner and Jay Height about the challenge of chronic hunger in Indianapolis and beyond. Dave, you were involved last year with a documentary about hunger and working families who have low incomes. Uh, what were some common reactions you heard from people who saw the film?
Yeah, so we didn't know what we didn't know what would happen with it. We ended up with about 65 showings so far, all across the state, with a panel discussion afterwards.
Hmm.
And I went to as many of those as I could get to, just exactly, Tim, to hear, how did people react to it?
Yeah.
And I would say that people in the trenches, so like Jay, uh, said it was validating. They were like, "Yep, that's what we're seeing." I've been telling my friends and neighbors this. So for them, it was an encouragement. For people who saw it who were not in the trenches, they were very surprised. All those stereotypes that we talked about in the last episode uh, were all active and real for them, and so the film in 30 minutes we tried to challenge as many of those stereotypes in 30 minutes as we could, right? So um, it was challenging, and I would say we definitely we definitely got their attention. And what we had really hoped to do was catalyze action. So not just, oh, this is a terrible problem, I feel bad about it, I leave. Or, even I'll say a few prayers and then forget about it. So the conversations were particularly what we were after. And I think of one in Muncie. The food bank up in Muncie got 85 people on a Thursday afternoon to come out to see the film, and they had a panel that included the faith community, low-income person, the business community, the healthcare community, the Ball Foundation. A broad representation of the community. And the really short version at the end was, "Whoa, we got a problem here in Muncie. We need to get together and do more than what we got to do something about this." So we were really, really encouraged by that. There was a showing in Plymouth, Indiana, which I went up for. The woman who was the head of the Chamber of Commerce came to the showing. She was on a group, that surprised group, right? So she went back and she said, the Chamber of Commerce members need to see this. So she said, she sent out the link to the film, said the next meeting we're going to talk about this, and they did. And one of the business owners there was like, "Oh my gosh." She went right back and changed the salaries, and she thinks with very positive impacts on productivity and her workers. So validating for the folks that have been in the trenches, and then hopefully surprising to folks that weren't.
Dave, tell us again where you could find that.
Sure. You can Google "The Working Hungry," and you'll find it in a couple of places. It's has its own page on the Indy Hunger Network site, which is indyhunger.org, INDY hunger.org. And you can stream it from there. There's no cost. We made the film because we wanted it to be seen and discussed, and so we make it available. There's a really nice resource guide on the website as well, which you can download, which will give you tips and clues on how to organize a showing, just a whole bunch of information to facilitate having a discussion about it. So.
And you're part of the team that's working on a second film now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So there were Shannon Cagle is the producer of the films, and then a video guy named David Duncan, and I made the first one. And because it did well, and because it did get a lot of conversation going. And then there's new data, which we can talk about, but we thought we better make another film and see if we can get an even wider audience. 65 showings is great, but there's a lot of people in Indiana who need to hear this story. So we will have, it will be released in December of this year at the IYI Kids Count Conference. We released the first one just before IYI the last time. That was really great because IYI brings in youth workers from all over the state, and so over lunch they got to see the film, and a lot of them went back then and started to use the film in their work. So we want to see the same thing again, and it'll be available on its own website by that in the next about a month from now. We'll have a new website up, Indy Hunger, probably Indy Hunger, Working Hungry, all one word, .org, and all the film and all the related support materials will be available there.
Yeah. Jay, I know you and the Shepherd team see this scenario all the time. People have a job, they work hard, but the income is just not enough to cover all the bills. That leads to some very difficult decisions, choices that have to be made. What are you hearing from families in terms of those types of hard calls they have to make?
You know, we've mentioned in the previous episode, the portrait of hunger looks dramatically different. It's not one look, it's many faces. And I think of a home that my wife and I deliver food to where this individual works 2 jobs, lives in the home he was born in,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have a vehicle, rides his bike to both jobs, and can't make ends meet. And one job pays, he's part-time, but he's paid a living wage, the $18 an hour that Brookings has determined. The other one doesn't. And so the pantry, he'll say, I don't need it every week, but a couple times a month it helps him get through.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked how many meals you're missing. I haven't got quite the answer, but that's happening. I think of the elderly woman that we have delivered food to, and a very typical, multiple folks in and out of the homes, and could not purchase bacon. We all love bacon, right? But when we delivered some, talked about all the many ways she was going to use it. And this is the beauty of this. Even those who struggle with food insecurity, she's such a giving person. And she said, well, I made this and I took it down to that family because I knew they were running short. And I know that it's probably going to cost her a meal, but very grateful and very creative in how they make things go further. You know, every bit of it that's going in is going to be used. I think of another situation where a young mom with multiple children still at home in school, and she is working, not making a living wage. I don't think she has health insurance. And so the kids are dependent on coming to school, coming to after school at Shepherd. In the summer programs, those are essential times. And this mom loves her kids as much as anyone. But if she didn't have these extra helps, they're all going to go hungry. And I think at a time when we see inflation and forget that they say inflation's dropping, the reality is prices have gone up and they haven't gone down.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's rent, whether it's utilities, whether it's gas, whether it's food. And so salaries haven't kept up with that,
Right. Yeah.
at least not for my neighbors. And so they're having to make difficult decisions. And I see it, the mom who doesn't take her medicine so that she can make sure her kids have. And so for me, it becomes very personal, not just in the fact that I know these folks and that my wife and I, you know, these are our neighbors. Something about loving your neighbor, I think he meant that. But it's the fact that people who love their kids like I do, like my wife does, is trying to love them as best as they can. And for different life reasons, they can't. Right. And people say America is the greatest country on the earth. We are when we love our neighbor. That's what makes us great.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. yeah, I think, Tim, that sometime, just to amplify what Jay just said, people throw out the phrase hard choices as if there's two decent choices that they're choosing between.
Yeah.
And that is just not the case for someone. I mean, choosing between whether you're going to take the medicine that you need or feeding your kids, there isn't a good choice in there.
Right.
Jay, say something about what you just talked to me about with rents in the area.
Yes.
Yes, a good friend Rex Fisher told me that within a 5-mile radius of downtown, rent has increased 60%. 60. Where do you come up with the extra?
Right.
And I think that's driving a lot of it. The other thing people say, well, you got a lot of pantries in your neighborhood. Yep, because we don't have a lot of groceries.
Right.
And food deserts are real. So if I wanted to ride public transit from this location to the closest Kroger's, you're talking an hour and a half to go a mile because you can't go direct.
Right.
And if I have more than 3 bags, I have to buy 2 tickets. And oh my, as we're getting into the heat of the summer soon, I got meat with me,
Fresh vegetables.
and they're sitting there next to me for an hour and a half. These are difficult, not having the opportunity to shop. But when I do, our neighbors have to shop in the center of the store because it's cheaper. What's on the exterior? Meats.
Dairy products.
Yeah, dairy. It's fresh products. But look at those prices. You and I might say, well, I'm only going to buy 2 green peppers instead of 4. But we're not going to go without. They go into the center part where canned meat is a better option price-wise. But we help in killing off our neighbors because of high sodium counts in there lead to high blood pressure, which is killing so many folks in my neighborhood.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't mean we don't do something. And sometimes I recognize this. Somebody will say, well, why are you giving out potato chips? Someone's probably giving them to us, but do you eat potato chips? Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandkids like to eat potato. They love Cheetos.
Yeah.
Their grandma doesn't love Cheeto orange all over the couch, but it comes with the territory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kids in the city like potato chips too.
Right.
There was a big national study, this is several years ago, but done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where they worked with a big chain. I don't remember which chain it was. And they segregated people into people who were receiving SNAP. So, your low-income folks.
Food stamps.
What used to be called food stamps. And then folks who didn't need that. And they looked across thousands of items. Rich Americans or well-off Americans didn't buy anything different than the low-income folks, right? It wasn't any different. The other thing, Jay, just jumping back a topic, I saw something really recently that really disappointed me about this country that I love. It was Gallup had asked a food insecurity question across the G8. And not only was the United States the worst country in terms of the percentage of working folks who were food insecure, we were a lot worse. I mean, it wasn't close. The United States came in at 26% food insecure. The next closest was Canada at 17, and then it ranged down through the UK, Germany, France, et cetera, down to Japan at 8. But we've got a lot of work to do in this country. We're not measuring up.
Yeah, I mean, Jane and we're not going to miss meals, and we at least I like to buy the Little Debbie's, which make Big J here in the middle, right? My grandkids like them. My neighbors like them. No, I don't want to feed the whole meal but that opportunity, and someone will say, well, why do they go to the gas station to shop? where else are they going to go?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about solutions. What needs to happen to reduce the prevalence of hunger?
I'm going to say one thing that I've been talking to our state house on and encouraging them. Currently, you cannot have more than $5,000 of assets and qualify for SNAP.
Hmm.
So if you have a good car to get to work,
A decent car.
Right.
you're knocked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of our leaders yesterday, and I made the case is if we really want to build independence, if we really want people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, got to make sure one they have boots. Is this is it? You're punishing those who are working because in Indiana you have to have transportation. We don't have mass transit.
Right.
So I need that to get to the work. And we know this, Dave, and something else that you and I have had lots of conversations on. To get to the jobs that pay a living wage,
Yeah.
you got to have transportation.
Right.
And so we're encouraging our legislature to raise that up to 10,000. And I think that's one tangible thing that we can encourage our friends in the state house, and they care. And I haven't met one who says, "Oh, absolutely no." That we have to make the case and show why that's helpful. And I don't think it's going to increase the numbers hugely, but those who are the working poor, it will have a huge impact on, and we want to help them. I think the other thing is my mantra: grow, not mow. Whether it's in your own yard, whether it's your church, businesses could do this.
Mm-hmm.
You got property, you're mowing, you're paying someone to mow. Well, get somebody to garden and then distribute those fresh produce in different ways. And there's a lot of great organizations that Dave probably knows better than I that are out there doing great things like Cleaners and Second Helpings and Indy Hunger Network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wages are key, Tim. I mean, if you're working and you can't feed your family, I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I think, well, by the way, there is something for Marion County employers called the Good Wages Initiative. The idea is to certify and celebrate those employers that pay a living wage. Everybody doesn't have to do it, but if you do it, you ought to get credit for that, and you ought to get celebrated for that. So I'm really pleased for the moves that Jay's made with at Shepherd. They've already done the work a couple of years ago. Hopefully they'll be certified soon. But that makes a huge difference in families. Yeah, it just...
Let's not miss this. So Shepherd is a nonprofit, a ministry, but they're paying a living wage.
Yeah, we don't want you to work here at a place where we say we want to help break the cycle of poverty and have you qualify for all of these services.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that families don't have difficult times and different challenges. Brookings Institute did research that it's $37,700, which is $18 an hour. Now they're saying because of inflation that's increasing, but we're saying that's the bottom. And have health insurance. And so whether you're a janitor, you work in our kitchen, you're teaching, you're helping in the preschool, you're going to make $37,700 with health, vision, and dental, and you can begin then to move up from there. And that was for us a starting place. Yeah, it's hard. It is hard. But we think that compassion has to start with our own team and making sure that we're making those adjustments. And they're suggesting we move to 44/7 and 21.50 an hour, I think is.
Yeah, there's still in conversation, but I think that's where it's going to be. Yeah.
And that's going to take us a few years. I was talking to our friend Scott Davison at One America, who is a big proponent of this. He took his company to this, and he said, "Jay, okay, you've got the bottom. Let's move this incrementally. We can't, jump to 21.50, but it's important. We're trying to hire our neighbors, and I think our testimony has to begin first with those that we employ."
And I just want to point out that if an urban ministry on the Near East Side of Indianapolis can try and get there, lots of others can as well.
Exactly right, Tim. That's exactly right. And I'm pleased to say Jay is joining. Gleaners Food Bank is certified. Second Helpings is food certified. Indy Hunger Network certified. The Fabicard Glick Community Center up in Pike Township is certified. So most of the 85 or 90 organizations that are certified at this point are for-profit, but leaders in the not-for-profit community are stepping up to it. I mean, it's like, it's family, right? If you,
Right.
I go out and do all this hunger work, and I don't take care of my own family. I'm not doing it right. So, yeah. And this is the hopeful side of me, Tim, is that we will start to change people's thinking, the conversations, almost exactly along the lines of what you just said. Well, if Shepherd can do this, right? Because that's what it's going to take to really drive hunger down. Is people realizing we did I was part of the getting the Good Wages Initiative started, and we had a grant from the Lilly Endowment. Before we got the grant from the Lilly Endowment, they gave us a planning grant, which was really nice. And we used that planning grant to go out and interview CEOs of Indianapolis companies, CEOs and other C-suite individuals. And this was shortly after the city had done its work with Brookings, and it had been published in the IBJ, right? And so, we talked to these folks. They're all really good folks, right? They didn't know what the standard was. Somehow that $18 they'd missed that. And secondly, they did not know what their lowest paid employees were being paid. So, they didn't know they were missing the standard. They didn't know if it impacted them. So I just mentioned that to say I'm hopeful that this effort will just get people thinking about it and aware and asking questions. And so I'm really, really proud of Shepherd for stepping up and hoping that will spur other people to do the same thing.
Well, hunger and income go together.
Yes. Before we close, I want to give both of you a chance to share some final thoughts on hunger in Indianapolis. What do you want listeners to walk away with?
It's in your neighborhood. You can do something about it. Find out how.
Yeah. We've said this already, but it bears emphasizing, Tim. The hungry are our neighbors. They're loved by God, just like everybody in this room, and we need to treat them as such. So,
Jay, would you pray for Dave and so many others who are doing such important work?
Father God, I thank you for friends like Dave and so many others who are out working hard to love in a very tangible way, to share that cup of cold water, that bag of groceries. In the name of Jesus, and others who are just doing amazing things, bless them, bless their families. Father, provide the resources and call us out to do more. We flesh you out when we love our neighbors as you've commanded us. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dave and Jay. For 39 years, Shepherd Community has made a lasting difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of neighbors. The Shepherd team couldn't do that work without the support of donors, partners, and volunteers. To learn more about how you can help, please visit shepherdcommunity.org. Thank you for listening.